And my name is Yukile Sugimura. I'm the chair of this committee, and I welcome everybody. Good morning. First of all, Vice Chair for this committee, Tasha Kama, will be coming a little late, but she will be here. Chair Lee, good morning.
Aloha and good morning to everyone. I'm looking forward to your meeting, Chair.
Good morning. Next, we have member Tamara Paulton from West Maui. Good morning.
Aloha kakaya kakako.
Aloha. And next, we have member Cook. Good morning.
Good morning. Aloha, Chair.
Aloha. And then we have member Nohe Uuhajens.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Online, we have Gabe Johnson from Lanai. I see you're in Lanai.
Aloha, Chair, council members, community members. There's no testifiers here at the Lanai District Office. Mahalo.
All right, nice to see you. For Shane Sinensi, good morning.
Hello and good morning from the Hana District Office. I'm here with district staff members, Davis Medeiros and John Lono, and no testifiers today.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And next we have, I want to introduce our resources from the Department of Management, Aaron Wade, Chief of Planning and Development. Good morning, Aaron. Nice to see you here. Good morning. From the Environmental Management, do we have Robert Schmidt here? I don't see him. Yeah. Oh, he's going to be on Blue Jeans. Okay, very good. Also on Blue Jeans, we have Director of Public Works, Jordan Molina. And from the Department of Corporation Counsel, we have Michael Hopper. Thank you very much. Committee staff, thank you very much. Yvette Botelier, we had her working. It was 10 o'clock at night. Thank you very much, Yvette. James Kruger, you also Senior Legislative Analyst. Jared Pasquale, Legislative Analyst. Megan Moniz, our attorney. Oh, there, you are there. Leigh Denning, which is Council Services Assistant Clerk. Thank you, members, for attending today's meeting. We have one item on our agenda, which is BFED 34, Bill 36, 2023, relating to the Maui Wildfires debris removal.
We'll just go down the row. So I'm Erin Wade with the Department of Management, and I'm overseeing the enrollment and outreach program for debris removal.
I'm Cory Koger of the Army Corps of Engineers. I'm a debris subject matter expert.
I'm Colonel Jess Curry, the commander of the Recovery Field Office for the Corps of Engineers. Just real quickly, that office, including working with Cory here, really brings the best from across the Corps to support this recovery effort. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Cole Glenwright. I'm the Chief of Debris Operations at the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, which is our state-level emergency management agency. And I'm here on a mutual aid assignment, providing technical assistance and guidance to Haima in the County of Maui.
Aloha, good morning. My name is Zeph McKee. I represent Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, and I am a debris operations planner for the state.
Kikuopio Akana, Managing Director, here to support the team and our legislators.
Yes.
So we're here before our legislative body and our impacted citizens regarding Bill 86, drafted by our Corporation Counsel for Deputy Hopper, proposing an ordinance relating to the Maui fires debris removal. Our objective is to ensure there is transparency in the process, that we can answer or clarify any questions for our legislators or our impacted citizens regarding this debris removal and the process. This process will take great coordination. Thus, we desire and we thank the council for getting it on the calendar to have open discussion. Of course, urgency is important because of the magnitude of the crisis that bestowed us and the work ahead of us. So we're going to be showing the general process. Some details may need to be worked out, but we do need your support to move this forward. The key message from Mayor Bisson is that the County of Maui and our federal and state partners and others want to emphasize that the County of Maui is offering free debris removal at zero cost for our impacted citizens, with the right of entry acting as the authorization or the permitting process for the owner to participate in the program. So we do emphasize and encourage our citizens to utilize our Army Corps of Engineers and the process for the free removal of debris. And we could not overemphasize that. But we will also establish and are establishing procedural administrative rules for the alternate debris removal program for those who elect not to participate. And this is where it becomes a little more, the rules will become a little tedious because you have to follow the procedure because of the nature of the debris. So we just want to emphasize to our impacted citizens who choose not to use the free program that they will have to abide by certain rules and procedures regarding the alternate removal program. Lastly, as we move from the extreme crisis that we were in to the crisis, to now the reentry, and then of course the recovery, things have been very fluid. Many of us, including yourselves, stretched thin and to the max, but we have made great progress in many, many areas. Patience will be our #1 virtue as we move into the future. We are confident that with our legislative body's wisdom and input, and with our leaders across all areas, that we can implement this critical component of the recovery from this unprecedented disaster. And we thank very much Chair Sugimura, all of the council members for allowing these experts and these subject matter experts to come and give their mana'o.
Managing Director, that really explains it, the difference between the government program versus if an individual wants to do it yourself. And that's exactly what this bill is about for the alternative program for those who want to do their own debris removal and what the guidelines would be. And I hope at some point, one of you will talk about the costs, because of course, the residents who want to do the debris removal will have to pay the cost. Whereas, as you said 10 times in your opening comments, the government process is free, and somebody can explain why that is when you talk about it later, and appreciate, your comments, and it came from the mayor also, correct?
We do have a presentation that basically outlines the entirety of the debris removal process, and then we'll walk through a little bit more about the specific phases. Let me just say up front too, for anyone that's been impacted by this or the spill directly is going to apply to, we're very sorry that we're in this situation. And our hope is that we can do our best to move this along as quickly as we can. Next slide. So today we'll go over a high level of what all of the debris removal program can look like in both forms. We'll talk about the phase 1 operations, which is currently underway, the phase 2 operations, which is the debris removal component, and then Bill 86, which talks through what the alternative debris removal will entail. Next slide, please. So the 2-phase model, essentially the first phase is underway right now with the Environmental Protection Agency. They're removing all bulk hazardous material from the site. Kula has been completed at this point, and they're about halfway through with the Lahaina cleanup phase. The phase 2 is structural debris removal, and I will pass it on to Cole, who's going to take the next couple slides.
Next slide, please. Great. Thank you again. For the record, Cole Glenwright with the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services. I've been asked to give a little overview of the process since California does have a good bit of experience moving through this. And we've tried where possible and practicable to model the Maui program after some lessons learned from California. So this slide has a bit of detail on it, and I'm hopeful folks can read through, but this essentially outlines the full process. You can see the phase 1 and the phase 2 that we mentioned, and my colleague, Dr. Koger from the Army Corps, will phase 2 in a bit of detail. But you can see that there's an important box between phase one and phase two, which is where the landowner makes a selection between the consolidated debris removal program, which is the program operated by the Army Corps, or the alternate debris removal program, which is what we're here principally to discuss today. I think an important takeaway from this slide is that regardless of the selection, the intent and the hope, and certainly the spirit of this bill, is that the standard of cleanup will be consistent. And that's, I think, hugely important as we remember that the entire purpose of this operation is to protect public health and safety. And so ensuring that whether a parcel moves through the consolidated program or the alternate program, the community, their neighbors, and the general public can be assured that the same level of care was given. You'll see also that phase one includes a few steps, and we'll talk through those. We are in kind of the first box within phase one, which is the component being managed by the Environmental Protection Agency. But it is important to realize there are a few additional steps under phase one, which are intended to set the consolidated program and the alternate program up for success. We'd be happy to flip back to this slide as we go. I think it is a great reference tool, but we'll talk about really each of these boxes in detail. And so if I can get the next slide, we can start that. Great. So this is the step we're on now. This is the work being done by the Environmental Protection Agency, which we're referring to as hazardous materials removal. You may also have heard it of household hazardous materials, household hazardous waste. There's a few terms being used for that work. But it is that direct removal by hand. It is, as we mentioned, being led by EPA. Just kind of for background and context of how we got there, EPA holds a federal emergency support function role, which designates them to do this work anytime FEMA asks. FEMA asked because the state of Hawaii asked on behalf of the county of Maui for them to take point on this. EPA, as you may know, has mobilized both its own personnel and contractors to do this work. And as we noted on that prior slide, phase one is what's done automatically without the necessity of an enrollment mechanism, which differs, of course, from phase two, which we'll talk about. Happy to answer questions about this when we get to the end. And I think many of us have heard from the Environmental Protection Agency themselves on this, who's, of course, best positioned to speak to this work. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Koger to speak about the remainder of phase one and then take us through phase two.
Thanks, Cole. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. Unfortunately, under these circumstances, I'd like to answer the first question that's probably on your mind. Why is the Army Corps here? Again, under direct federal assistance, the request was made from the state to feed.
Is your mic on?
Can you guys hear me?
On, yeah, no.
Oh, sorry. So I'll start again. Under direct federal assistance, a request from the state was made to FEMA. FEMA then has to, or under our emergency support function role, to remove the phase two debris. So next slide, please. So we still have a role in phase one. First and foremost is coordination with EPA to make sure that they've completed household hazardous waste removal. Secondly, we have to do a site assessment, which is basically the scope for every parcel or TMK or tax map key. That site assessment basically is a site map, documents the debris that's on site and checks for site hazards. We in addition, will also be removing any bulk asbestos that was left by EPA because they have a very limited scope for that. In addition, resource advisors in the form of biologists, archaeologists, and Native Hawaiian monitors are going to assess the site and flag for resources that require protection. That's a critical path that we need to perform prior to debris removal, whether a person opts into the phase two consolidated program or decides to do debris removal on their own. And then finally, at some point, and I think this might be kicking off soon, EPA will apply a tackifier for public health concerns. Next slide, please. So during asbestos assessment and abatement, the HAZWOPER or hazardous waste operations trained certified consultants will sample suspect asbestos material. That's sent to a lab. If it comes back as positive, then those materials are removed for disposal. Currently, all household hazardous waste is being disposed of off island. Next slide, please. So for the phase 2 process, it begins with enrollment. That enrollment is through a right of entry for each and every property owner or parcel owner. Once enrollment has taken place and EPA has completed phase 1, then the Corps can initiate phase 2 debris operations, which is the second step, phase 2 debris removal. After debris removal of all eligible debris under this program, soil analysis will occur with soil sampling. We'll go into a little bit more detail in a couple of slides on what that entails. And we'll also remove any hazard trees that are eligible for the program. And note that this is a hazard tree versus a hazardous tree. The hazard that comes from these trees is that they are dead or dying and have a potential fall hazard, but they are not termed hazardous under the program that we're removing right now. And that doesn't necessarily have to happen at the end of debris removal. We may have to remove trees for safety of the workers, or they may actually be in the debris stream. And then finally, erosion control will be applied so that runoff does not occur after debris removal has been completed. Next slide, please. So under the Consolidated Debris Removal Program, the Army Corps, USACE, would receive an ROE from the property owners. They basically opted into the program. That is a no out-of-pocket cost for the property owners, and the Army Corps will perform all of those duties from start to finish, with the exception of phase 1, which is currently being done by US EPA. The alternate program is when a property owner must submit a work plan, an alternate work plan, which is the purpose of the bill that we're discussing today. And that work plan goes to the county for approval and outlines the debris removal plan that in general mimics the phase 2 program that the Army Corps is performing. So under that, with probably few exceptions, the property owners will have to hire qualified private contractors to complete that. So when you look at hiring asbestos consultants or certified arborists or air monitoring consultants or soil sampling consultants, it's a fairly significant and technical process that will be carried out again by the Army Corps if they opt in, but they would probably have to hire an environmental consultant to perform that on their own. At the bottom, note, for property owners that do not select a debris removal program to remove the existing public nuisance and health hazard, their property may be abated at the director's discretion, and there's language in the bill that specifies that. Next slide, please. During debris removal, as you can see from the slide, there's a heavy equipment operation. The contractor, the Army Corps, and at the property owner's discretion, the property owner will walk the site. They'll determine what is eligible based upon the site assessment that's already been performed. In the ROE process, there is an area where the request can be made by the property owners for specific items to be left. If it is possible to do so, we can work with the contractor to make sure that happens. The crew typically removes metal and concrete and transports them to recycling centers. The intent is to recycle at all possible. Everything that can be recycled will be recycled under this event. The crew removes ash and debris and transports in lined haul trucks. So in essence, we're plastic wrapping and heat sealing all of that material. And that it goes to a TDSR. You see that that's a temporary debris storage and reduction site. That's the acronym TDSR. In this case, we're not probably going to do much reduction. It's going to be that plastic wrap material. And then finally, that would be disposed of in an approved landfill that is yet to be determined. So there's still some work to do on where the temporary site will be set up and where the final disposal site will be made. And that is, the Corps is working with Maui County as we speak to determine that. After all of that ash and debris has been removed, the crew will scrape 6 inches of soil from the building footprint, or the eligible footprint, as it were. We don't take all ash. Not all ash contains those structural materials that are inherently or potentially toxic. So that 6 inches of soil is removed. During the entire process, air monitoring will be conducted to make sure that the workers, the wet methods we're employing to knock down dust are working, and that the community is being cared for. I should also like to add that erosion control, once an ROE is received is also put in place prior to work so that there is some protection once folks opt in that will put in barriers to make sure that ash does not migrate off-site. Next slide, please. There's sort of an unprecedented level of demolition that may have to occur during this event. Typically, demolition is not eligible under the PPDR, Private Property Debris Removal Program, from FEMA. But the letter that approved PPDR also approved demolition as indicated by the County of Maui. So again, the Corps or FEMA do not make this determination. Maui County currently has building inspectors going out, and if a building cannot be saved, it will probably be eligible for this program. But just know that that's a little bit different than we normally do, so that's going to require different types of material, different types of equipment to do demolition. In addition to that, we have to follow Section 106 consultation for historic preservation. We're working with FEMA Environmental and Historic Preservation Office, as well as the SHIP-D office, the State Historic Preservation Division, to identify historic buildings that will receive additional review. If those can be saved, we will do our utmost to do so. But if they can't be, and that determination is made by everybody else but the Corps, then they might be eligible for this program and we would remove them. Next slide, please. Soil analysis will occur again after all eligible debris has been removed. Samples are collected from the ash building footprint. Samples are sent to a certified laboratory and analyzed at a minimum for heavy metals. We are working currently with the State Department of Health to determine what sampling is required and the cleanup goals that need to be met for rebuild. And that's the key part of this is the intent is to get back to rebuilding. So working with the State Department of Health as well as the Building Commission, we're making sure that folks can actually get back and rebuild into their homes. So we're working through that process. That has not been finalized, but those same requirements would hold for the private debris removal program or the alternate program. Sample results are, again, compared to those health screening levels as appropriate. And if those results are higher than those screening levels, an additional 6 inches of soil will be taken. Under the approval that the Army Corps received from FEMA and that went to the state, and that additional 6 inches of soil is the maximum limit of excavation for this event. So a maximum of 12 inches of soil will be removed. Previous studies from the state of California have shown that the initial 3 to 6 inches of soil is the impacted soil by a fire event. So this is a safeguard to go an additional 6 inches of soil deeper. There's other reasons why we don't want to excavate, mainly because of the cultural sensitivity. We don't want a huge excavation for these properties. So we'll have to go through that process, and that may be case-by-case basis. Next slide, please. As we discussed, hazard trees will be removed during this event. Trees along public roads and infrastructure are assessed by an arborist to determine if they're dead or dying, and a hazard tree, by definition, will die within 5 years as stated by an arborist. So there's other criteria that need to be met, but in general, those trees should and will be taken under this event unless we are given information otherwise. If Maui County identifies certain trees, homeowners identify certain trees, they will be saved if they can, but in some cases, we won't even be able to go on the property until those trees are removed. That removal process is performed by a licensed operator from the state of Hawaii. Next slide, please. After work has been completed, the trees have been removed and the structural ash and debris have been removed. Proper erosion control measures will be placed on the property. A stormwater pollution prevention plan, just like any other large construction project, will be in place and will be enforced. Final inspection is conducted to confirm that all work has been performed, and at that point, we will send Maui County a letter stating that the work has been performed to the restrictions and requirements of this program. And at that point, Maui County can start discussions with the property owners about rebuild, about insurance costs, and things like that. And that is the end of our involvement, and we have returned the right of entry so that the Army Corps and the federal government do not have rights or access to that site. However, we will be leaving in place those stormwater controls, so those will become the responsibility of the property owner at that time. Next slide, please. I'll turn it over to Zeph McKee.
Aloha, everyone. Once again, my name is Zeph McKee. I'm representing the Hawaii Emergent Agency. Also representing HIEMA in the stand is our Executive Officer, Don Aveal, and will be available to answer questions after this as well. So just briefly wanted to go through the what Bill 86 allows and prohibits. So you can see up here on the screen that the big distinction that I want to make here is the difference between debris and personal belongings. So this does not intend to restrict people from being able to enter their properties and recover personal belongings. The intention of this bill is to restrict people and prohibit people from going in and removing ash and other toxic materials on their own accord. And so the way this works is that prior to the phase 1 cleanup, you can see if no structure has been burned on the property, then the owner is allowed to remove debris. And we'll talk briefly about qualified structures. So those are structures that are considered to be 120 square feet or more. Are qualified. Non-qualified is underneath that. So if a structure is less than 120 square feet, after the phase 1 process has been completed, the owner may remove and begin to remove debris with the approval of the director of the designated department. So it does say on here, director of the Department of Environmental Management. That has been changed in the bill to just the designated department, as a department has not been selected at this time. And so basically the way this works is that following phase 1, if someone decides to enroll in the alternate program, that is a program separate from the Army Corps program, then they will need to contract with an approved contractor to remove the ash and dust from their property. Following phase 2 cleanup, the authorized department will be the one designated to approve and sign off that the work has been completed, and that any sort of debris removal can be performed on the affected parcel. Can we go next slide, please? And I'll briefly run through the bill. So Bill 86, Section 1, I'll go over briefly just some of these sections. Section 1 briefly outlines the findings and declarations, identifies that underneath Hawaii Revised Statutes 46, each county has the power to enact ordinances necessary to protect life and health and property. Additionally, it defines the incident as Maui Wildfires. So all of the debris that will be removed will be directly related to the fires in Lahaina and Kula and other areas directly affected by the fires. Additionally, it provides definitions for hazardous materials as well as hazard trees. And there is a big distinction, as Dr. Koger made, that hazard trees are trees that are have the potential to fall either in the ash footprint or to fall onto public right-of-ways and cause additional damage. So in Section 2, it goes over briefly definitions. Again, there is not a department or agency currently designated for enforcement on this at this time. And additionally, it defines the Army Corps program as the government program. not codified in this bill, but also referenced. We've been calling it the Consolidated Debris Removal Program. And all three of those names, Government Program, Consolidated Debris Removal Program, and Army Corps Program, are the same program. So additionally, it defines the partially burned structures of 120 square feet or greater as the structures that will be considered for this cleanup, in addition to the ash footprint, concrete foundations, contaminated soil, vehicles, trailers, and other debris from the property. Section 3 duration specifies that the ordinance takes effect immediately upon approval and ends as soon as the designated department has deemed that everything has been completed. Section 4 briefly prohibits any removal of structural debris from private property by someone who is not a certified contractor, either through the Army Corps program or through the alternate program. However, it does not, and it specifies in the bill, it does not preclude the removal, or it does not prohibit the removal, of personal property from residential or commercial sites. So existing commercial property, it would not prohibit anyone from taking that. Section 5 briefly summarizes the government program. It is specified, it has been specified already, and it will be continually articulated that this will come at no out-of-pocket cost to the owner. When we say no out-of-pocket cost to the owner, we mean that the property owner will not be paying any money. However, if they have insurance and that insurance policy has a clause that specifically relates to debris removal, those costs will need to be remitted from the insurance provider. Additionally, Section 5 outlines that property owners may join the government program through a right of entry permit. We currently have collection stations established for these right of entry permits, and will continue to collect them for enrollment into this government program. Section 6 goes over the alternate program and establishes that, and essentially states that the alternate program will match the rigor of the government program. The standards established will be identical to what will be required of the government program. Additionally, it states that the designated department to manage the alternate program will manage the application process. And so homeowners or property owners will need to submit an application to the designated department for approval. Additionally, it gives the designated department the authority to put together deadlines. Section 7 establishes a brief hold on building permits for affected parcels until the director or the designated department can ensure that the cleanup process has completed. And finally, Section 8 allows for enforcement. An enforcement process establishes a brief civil fines for not following the program, and then additionally gives the director of the designated department the authority to extend the deadline of the program should it be needed.
Up to testify is Susan Piccola Davis, followed by Chloe Martin.
Just wanted to make 2 points on the presentation. For right of entry, will those that have less than 120 square feet be notified before even going through the rigor? And will sites designated for demolition be publicized prior to demolition? Okay, going to my testimony, be it ordained by the people of the county. And ordained, the meaning of it is to order, established, or enact with authority by the people. I think this bill needs to be separated between Kula and Lahaina due to two distinct circumstances, density and damage. For those reasons alone, I think Lahaina's debris removal must be separated. However, I understand there's a timing issue that has to be carefully designated. So you could write two separate bills. Unfortunately, I do not know how many zones in Kula had been completed, but last night looking at Lahaina, there's approximately 45 zones. And at the first look for re-entry, emotion, denial, sadness, because no one is prepared to experience a loss this huge. They may stay a while and go home to recover from the shock, but they will need to prepare for the next time. Things that have been posted in social media as advice is to make sure you bring plenty of water. It's hot. There's some, not rakes, but hand tools that you can do to scrape through the ashes without making a lot of dust. It isn't reality. Memories will be both happy and sad, remembering time before August 8th. As you listen to me and see your constituents suffering from their loss, are you prepared to really enact a bill that will be punitive, set deadlines without information regarding Lahaina residents returning, lacks clarity, prohibits removal of structural debris except pursuant to the requirements of the table, be misunderstood by many words like qualifying and unqualifying structures, declare someone a public nuisance and health hazard, order a civil fine. All of the above, written by a lawyer, is a sad optic for government officials. Anytime there is a perceived lack of control, a new law is written. Put yourself in their shoes. Go meet them, comfort them, be with them, and most importantly, listen. And this presentation that was provided today should be made available a number of times in any town hall with explanations as well as it was done today. The automatic removal, if you sign a right to entry, is for anything over 120 square feet. If it's under 120 square feet, that will not be removed free of cost.
The question is there a list of qualified contractors for homeowners if they decide to opt out of the government program? If the homeowners decide to opt out, who are they going to call? Right? Who's the go-to person? And if that's readily available to them, then it's easier for them to either vet it themselves or to make the call and figure out if they're going to, what it's going to cost them to do this as opposed to do the other thing. But they'd have time to do that.
Yeah, so there isn't a list at this time, but I would point out that, I'll give a reminder that if they opt into the county program, it is no cost to the property owners at this time. And an important thing to keep in mind is if you look at that table in front of you of all the experts we have just to try and put the county program together, these property owners are going to have to build a similar team. And it is going to be a team of professionals and contractors that they'll need to assemble on their own to comply with the alternate program standards for that debris removal. So there is no preset list at this time because it's going to take different professions and experts to assist these property owners. And that'll be, as part of the structure of this program is that if they want to undertake it on their own, they need to do their due diligence to be able to comply with the requirements of the alternate program standards. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Molina, you mentioned at no cost to the homeowner or the property owner, you mean that the debris removal will be paid for by FEMA, correct?
To that. So yes, and just recently FEMA has approved through President Biden the use of 100% cost share for the County of Maui to pay for this program for 6 months. What this means is that it will be paid 100% by FEMA for the next 6 months, after which it will go to a 90%, 10% cost share. And that is for the County of Maui and the state of Hawaii to deal with themselves, right? The 10% there. It does not affect insurance, however. So if there is any duplication of benefits, meaning that if someone would otherwise receive money from their insurance specifically for debris removal, that will have to be remitted to the federal government in order to avoid duplication of benefits.
Okay, just a clarification. Did you say after a certain amount of time, the cost share will become 90-10 and then more over time? Is that what you just said?
So the cost share, as approved, will be 100% for 6 months,
6 months.
after which it will go to 90% with the federal government, 10% with state and county.
Okay, two more things. The testifier asked about the 120 square feet concern. Do you have that answer too?
Yes, so the 120 feet, that will not be covered by the program. And I can defer to Army Corps to talk a little more about what counts and does not count in their program for that.
All right, please.
That is for the primary structure on the property. So if there is only a 120 square foot structure, that's typically not eligible under the program.
Okay, that's fine.
So if there is a residence, a larger structure, all structures on the property will be removed as eligible under the program. That comes from building codes. 120 square feet is the permittable size for under the International Building Code.
Okay. Oh, what if somebody had a bigger home and 120 square foot accessory? What about that?
So then, yes, if they have an eligible structure on that parcel, then all structures that burned on that parcel will be removed under the program.
Okay, great. So do you go through an RFP procurement process in order to identify contractors that you will hire to pay for the removal?
You're referring to the government program?
Yes, the government program.
Okay, so the way it worked is that the state of Hawaii put out a request to assist with debris removal through a government program to the federal government, to FEMA. FEMA then made a mission assignment to the Army Corps of Engineers to be the prime contractor, and they will be the ones issuing and going through procurement standards. And they will be following federal procurement standards as well.
How long would that take?
We're currently in the process of negotiating contracts as we speak.
Are there contractors from Maui?
So we are using local 8A firms for 4 of the 5 contracts we intend to let.
Local what?
Native Hawaiian owned organizations under the 8A Small Business Program. We already have agreements in place. So those are sole source contracts for, as I said, 4 of the 5 contracts we intend to let.
Okay, and maybe one last thing that you want to say for the public's reference. Although you don't know exactly how much the removal process will cost under the government program, but I did hear at one of the meetings that on average, it could be around $70,000.
That would
so that people know what they might have to end up paying themselves.
Yeah, thank you. So I think I was the one that provided the 70,000 figure at the last time I was before this body. That's kind of the average pricing we're seeing in California. I think, I'm not sure anyone is really even speculating what the final cost will be for an individual doing the work here. I think there'll be a variety of factors playing into that, including contractor scarcity, and availability to do the work. But I would hedge it's probably no less than 70,000 if that's what it costs to do on the mainland.
My first question is, has the master contract been awarded for debris removal?
So we've, given the cultural sensitivity, we won't have one master contract. We're going to have 5 different prime contracts. One specifically for cultural awareness, cultural sensitivity, cultural training, and providing the cultural monitors and archaeologists. So, yeah, again, there won't be one, and we haven't awarded any contracts yet pending the final disposal site determination.
So what would the other 4 contracts be besides cultural monitoring?
So the intent is to use one contractor to do residential properties, one contractor to do the public properties, and one contractor to do the commercial properties, because they all have very different requirements on how we're going to do those cleanups.
And then any special precautions for the industrially zoned areas, or would that just be under commercial?
That would be commercial. Yeah, industrial commercial would fall under the same. And a lot of that will be the demolition work that we discussed previously, and the cleanup requirements will be different working under the state of Hawaii.
And then for the building or the lots in phase 1 that have a red or a yellow placard, they don't get the green from the EPA. Is there an opportunity still yet for the owners to sift through before the debris removal, or no?
I would defer to the county, as that's a safety issue. Oh.
So currently you're referring to the red, yellow, and green placards that have currently been issued. US EPA is not responsible for issuing those placards. They are the ones issuing the all clear household hazardous waste placards. I know there are quite a few placards being pushed out, but the red, green, and yellow ones are currently being issued by County of Maui Department of Public Works through they have been doing building assessment, structural assessment programs to determine the safety of these buildings. That does not prohibit any resident from re-entering their property. It is the placard is simply a warning that those properties may have free hanging or freestanding structures that, given a strong gust of wind or rain, could potentially fall over. But there will be given ample opportunity for people to go in and sift for belongings. For specifics on that, I would speak with Maui Emergency Management Agency, as they're the ones currently managing it right now.
And then some of the residents contacted me that they have a specific rock or rock wall or kumu ulu tree or burials, and if they sign the right of entry, they can avoid the Army Corps can avoid those areas that they map out. But then what happens to those areas? Like, do they still get tested for toxicity and stuff like that? Can they just be left as is?
So we have a copy of the right of entry, and there is a place to put a sketch on the back. So in general, if the specified resource is within the ash footprint, it may have to be taken because it's been impacted. But we'll work with cultural resource monitors that we are specifically hiring for that to determine how we're going to do that work. They have the authority to stop work or pause work. And then the archaeologists, the State Historic Preservation Office, and FEMA's Environmental Health and Preservation Officer, we can all make a determination at that time what we can do with that resource. But first and foremost, they should map it on so that it's identified so that we can have that discussion.
So for like a kumu ulu tree or family burials that are around the kumu ulu tree, then it will have to be removed.
So typically, if they're underneath a tree, that's not a hazardous material. It's only the structural debris that's considered a hazard.
What about your 6-inch scrape, though?
That does not include anything outside of the structural ash footprint. So we will leave intact everything that we can. The sole purpose of this is to remove that material that burned from structures, cars, but trees, again, are not hazardous. It's just like a forest fire.
So it could be left.
So that those will be left. That tree, however, depending on the arborist designation, we'll have to work through that on a case-by-case basis. Because if it represents a falling hazard, we may be required under this program to take that because it could fall on a new structure that was built.
The EPA, the hazardous debris removal will be taken off island. My question is where and how is it transported? And a guesstimate of the volume.
So I can speak to a little bit about that. We've had a chance to meet with EPA at their staging area and see some of their operations. So first of all, the debris itself, they're using quite a few precautions. Even batteries, for example, which are things that they can't really transport by ships. They have to completely de-energize and then process in such a way so that there's no threat of any leaking or combustion or anything of that sort. And I imagine that it is the same for many of their other hazardous wastes and things like that. As to the location of final disposition, that I do not know. Do you know, Dr. Koger?
There are a number of hazardous waste facilities on the mainland that are taking this material. I think they've identified 3 or 4. I don't know what the specifics are. But as we get into our contracting mechanisms, we'll probably use the same vendors. And they're shipped under hazardous waste manifest.
When does the 6-month clock start? You said as far as the 100% and then 90%, 10% split occurs at a 6-month period. Has that started already, or is that forthcoming, that start date?
So that 6-month begin date is at the discretion of state leadership.
To be determined?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it is to be determined. That has not been, the start date has not been determined yet.
For the alternative program, the county standards, they're going to be provided when and where can they be found? And then who will review and approve the alternate program?
So the first question about when will the standards be ready? So we are working on that simultaneously, but this is the foundation. We have to build that on top of. So whatever you're specifying here, if you're saying there's violations or what the time frame will be, all of those things, we'll build it off of that. So this is our starting point. But we do have templates that have been provided to us from other communities that we can work through. Right now, it's very clear that this is going to have to be a multi-departmental effort.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to determine who's going to be the intake, and then are we going to have bring in a team to assist us in reviewing for alternative program, or are we going to try to handle it in-house? And as you know, all of our departments are stretched. So we're trying to identify, we know that this needs to be expeditious.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then for the government program, how long does the right of entry period last? And I'm kind of looking for more details. So if I own a property on one side of the affected area, do I have to wait for the other side of the affected area to be cleaned? Are you guys going to kind of go by piecemeal and subdivide it out? Or how long is this going to last? And then after you're done cleaning, let's say it's not done to whatever standard, hypothetically, do you guys have the ability to come back and fix if you guys missed anything?
I'll take the right of entry part and then I'll pass it to you for the strategy. So right of entry, anyone can submit now. We're already accepting right of entries and have accepted in Kula. And then our intention is, as we start to move through the reentry process in Lahaina, is to meet with each neighborhood as the reentry is opened up, and then can continue to meet with them.
The question regarding whether anything was missed, typically there's going to be a walkthrough at the end with our contractor, the Army Corps, and we will invite Maui County to make that determination so that we do not leave a site. If there are issues or concerns that are outside of the program, we would be willing to discuss those, but that in general, we're kind of restricted by what is eligible as we discussed. So if it's eligible and it wasn't removed, there will probably be a reason for it. And one of those reasons might be there's a retaining wall that we cannot remove because it is actually holding back a slope. So for safety issues, and that will be determined during the site assessment. So the property owner will be notified that we cannot remove that retaining wall, and then they have the option to either opt in or opt out of the program.
Okay, and then how long do people have to wait? Like, are you guys gonna go by subdivision? And then when the subdivision is kind of with the cleanup, can people go back, or are they waiting for the entire thing to be clean?
So we have a couple of different factors. If we have rights of entry for efficiency's sake, we will probably sector out once we get enough of a volume that makes sense to go into a subdivision.
Okay.
So we encourage people to enroll early so that we can actually have some sort of efficiency as we move through.
Okay. And then for the alternate program, again, going back to that, how long do people have to find a contractor, get approval by the county? Does that gonna affect their timeline if the county takes a long time to approve their permit? And then before they're determined to be a public nuisance? What does that timeline look like?
We haven't set those dates yet, but Cole, would you like to share a typical?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So, and there really is no typical, right? The intent usually is to try and not allow the alternate program to extend too far past the end of the consolidated program. And so we've often seen jurisdictions set, 3 to 4 months after the substantial completion of the consolidated program. There is often an interest in communities to try and figure out if there is going to be a small universe of folks that are non-compliant, so that while there is a general contractor mobilized and performing work for the consolidated program, in California, we're often able to, through a judicial process, get those folks enrolled in the consolidated program so that they can get cleaned concurrent with it and they aren't hanging out there forever.
It's about Waiakuli in specific, but I know there might be other areas that has cesspools, but Waiakuli has a lot of cesspools. Does that create new challenges or more difficulties when it comes to all the things you're describing, the 4-inch or the 6-inch grading up to a 12-inch grade, putting those large machineries on the property? Do the cesspools cause any problems for you guys?
Yeah, this is Cory from the Army Corps. Certainly they can from an operational perspective. So if those can be identified on the right of entry for the map, that makes it simpler for the process. Over.
Okay, thank you. How about the, Lahaina was very historic, and I know you mentioned you were speaking with Chmte, the historical district. Does that cause creating any issues that you guys haven't come across before when dealing with a big disaster like this?
So first and foremost, yes, we are hiring archaeologists to perform 100% cultural surveys for every parcel that's been impacted. That's unprecedented. We have never had to do that. So that is going to occur prior to any phase 2 activities. All of those results will be available as appropriate for the community. There's also, in general, I'm looking at a slower process to go through that, because we will also have 100% cultural monitoring for every parcel. So as we go through anything that's identified, we may have a pause. It may get to the point where we will not be able to complete our work as defined in our scope on that parcel, and then the property owner could opt out at that point. And I want to make that clear that at any time during our debris removal operations, the parcel owner can opt out of the program.
At any given time? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So luckily we haven't had any big storms hit West Maui yet, but over a long period of time, there's going to be some storms, some weather effects. Can you speak on how the weather affects the removal process?
We will anticipate some weather delays. Good news is most, if not all, of the debris removal will occur under wet methods, so we will already be wetting the material. So in that sense, light rains help the community because of the toxic nature of the dust that's out there. We will build into our program, there will be safety stand downs based upon weather events. So we will work around those.
Thank you. So there was, unfortunately, wildfires is not a new thing. Like we've spoke with a lot of different communities, the campfires, the paradise fires, et cetera, et cetera. All of the experienced municipalities, they were mentioning that during the cleanup process, a lot of the county roads and infrastructure gets beat up and damaged because of that. The heavy machinery on residential roads. I can only imagine what that does over this huge operation. Is there going to be funds to reimburse the county if a lot of our roads get damaged?
Yeah, I can speak a bit to that because I'm familiar with the example you're citing in Paradise. So Paradise's road repair was funded by a combination of federal highways and FEMA public assistance funding. And they may have shared the crucial element to that was their pre-work documentation, including laser surveys of their road network to evidence to federal funders what the current or actual condition of the road network is, so they could document damage directly resulting from debris removal. So I can't speak for FEMA or FHWA on if those same funding streams will be available, but that's how it's worked in the past.
Okay, so the pre-work needs to be done. Ms. Wade, or anybody up there know if the county's done any, or actually Director Jordan Molina is here. So is there any pre-work done to our roads before before they start removing?
This is Jordan, Director of Public Works. Yeah, that damage assessment work is ongoing at this time.
Has there been residents that have expressed to opt out of the government program? And if there has, have they shared why they want to opt out?
Thank you, Council Member. Yes, we do have one in Kula who shared that their debris line item in their insurance was quite high and that they felt like it was to their benefit to attempt to do the alternative program. They did express concerns about timing. But what they are going to do is actually opt in with the right of entry and then watch and see if, as the timing plays out, if they're still able to beat the Army Corps removal, they'll do that and go alternative route. If not, they'll be already enrolled in right of entry and be able to proceed that way.
Thanks for that, Ms. Wade. Then following up on the historic buildings, I know that the county does have our own archaeologists and the mission on historic resources. Can the county use our own resources, part of the cultural monitoring?
Thank you for the question. We do a review already and have deployed signage in partnership with State Historic Preservation Division, FEMA, and our in-house team that identifies all properties that are contributing to the National Historic Landmark District. So anything above or below ground that was a contributing property to the Lahaina NHL is being documented and verified in the field as well.
Oh, okay, so Ms. Six is part of that in-house team?
That's correct.
Okay, great, thank you. And then we've been receiving calls about the appropriateness of the PPEs and the Tyvek suits. Are the PPEs adequate for residents to use? I know the glasses are not actually goggles, but just safety glasses, and the gloves are just standard gloves. Are these adequate for residents?
So I can speak to that. The State Department of Health has put out official guidance on that you can find on their website. But they have expressed that, yes, the Tyvek suits and the gloves as provided, and most importantly is a face respirator. So not just your regular face mask, but an N95 or better is recommended in order to prevent small particles. And that's really what you want to prevent is inhalation of small particles.
Okay, thank you for that. And then are there going to be screens, dust screens put up between the burn sites and some of the existing homes that still may house residents?
A few fences and dust screens have already been constructed. Most of that has been either through the State Department of Transportation or Maui Department of Public Works. And if Jordan wants to elaborate on that, he may.
Thanks. Yeah. So as when we get into the debris operations, these can speak to this, but there will be BMP's best management practices employed to try and control dust as activities occur, and taking into consideration when we're working next to standing structures or structures that may still have inhabitants in the area. So those considerations will be made during the phase 2 operation. Thank you.
Thanks, Director. And then my other question was, are there alternatives to using the tasifier? We've been receiving calls about, I get it, maybe the tasifier up country, but for using the tasifier down near the shoreline might pose some issues with its proximity to the ocean. So once they use the tasifier, is it going to be quickly cleaned up?
So the EPA has provided a lot of valuable information on the tackifier. It is an organic material and breaks down very quickly. The alternative to using the tackifier, because it's being used to prevent wind from blowing up all the dust as well as erosion from rainfall. The alternative to that is just wetting the soil constantly to keep it from blowing around, which is, I know water is a very valuable resource, so that would be expensive. And I think, I won't speak for EPA, but the idea is to prevent that erosion and prevent the dust from blowing around.
About contractors that will be certified or able to do the work that is required for this, because it sounds like it's highly specialized. Will there be classes for the contractor to become certified, or is there some kind of criteria or standard that must be followed?
Thanks for the question. As we discussed, there's going to be a number of different contractors required. So the certification is usually through the state. So I would recommend that if contractors are interested, they reach out to their state certification agency, whether that's an arborist or a tree removal service or a certified asbestos consultant. They may have classes that are available typically online. For general construction, to go into what we're calling the hot zone in the ash area, at a minimum, they have to have HAZWOPER certification. EPA was offering that free of charge. I don't know how many slots they still have available, but that might be a resource to send a link for.
Director Molina, if you would, talk about the work that you're doing to be sure that the structures are safe, or what is your team doing now?
Thank you, Chair. So the current program is safety assessments, whereby our DSA building permit department, as well as support from the state of California, has been performing safety assessments to determine whether the buildings are safe to occupy. And so the determination is really just your minimum safety assessment on whether these structures, the ones that are more or less still partially standing, are safe for the occupants to be in those buildings. That's kind of the rough extent of it. From there, we're going to have to do a further assessment for those standing structures to determine the extent to which demolition may be required to abate the hazards for those structures. Thank you.
Thank you. And so you'll be communication with the property owners about this.
That's correct. I mean, Public Works is going to be involved throughout the duration of the cleanup.
Oh, very good. Okay. And one of the comments, from our first testifier was that she appreciated your presentation that you all put together. And I wonder if there's a way that we could, I don't know if you want to work on it, but if we could have it, play on a kaku or get it publicized so that people, or put it on Maui recoveries.org on that website so people can watch it. But I would like a bigger reach also. Would that be possible, Erin?
Yes, and we're also planning to do a little video series. So if you just want to know about one phase or understand the different components, we'll be posting that on Maui Recovers as well.
Okay, and then one of the statements was that if you opted in for the government process and then you decide to change that you want it out of it and do on your own, so what happens with the cost? I think we got to think about that because to do it on your own is a completely different cost. But to do it through the government process, you take from your insurance policy first, and then the government would cover the difference. So how would that be handled?
I can start on that answer because we do have some experience with that, and then Cory is definitely to jump in. So, it is correct that the right of entry permit as a voluntary agreement allows you to terminate it at any time. The challenge is you kind of have to opt out and into something, right? Which is usually, by definition, the alternate program. And there's a couple cost considerations. One is that if costs have been incurred on your property to date, that insurance recovery provision is still applicable. So if you opt out after some work is done, the federal government has an obligation to prevent the duplication even for that work. The second would be that, you're opting out into the alternate program, the full cost of that ahead as discussed. And at least in our experience in California, if you leave the government program, it's not always possible to get back in afterwards, right? And we have had that issue where folks opt out, they then get a bid from a contractor, it's more than they can afford, and they try and get back into the public program, but the public program has already moved along. So we would really encourage folks, before they make that determination, to think long and hard. And our jurisdictions in California are pretty forward with their constituents if they're making that decision before they, let them submit that withdrawal form, to really sit down with them and say, is this the best decision for you? And I would really encourage the county staff to do the same.
And I would direct anyone who's curious about the actual terms of that to go to the ROE form, which is available on mauirecovers.org. And under Section D, other terms, number 10, modification, it gives permission for, or it allows the ROE to be terminated by submitting an executed withdrawal form to the county. And then it also does say that the government may seek reimbursement for expenses incurred up to the point of withdrawal, including insurance claims.
But anyway, there are 4 out of 5 8A contractors. Who are the 4 and who's the 5th?
So we haven't awarded any contracts yet.
Okay.
So, do you want to know which of the 8As
Yes.
in particular?
Yes.
We have a group of 5 or 6 that already have agreements with our Pacific Ocean Division and or Honolulu District. So we'll be working through those. I can get you a list of those.
Oh, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. Section 7 of the building permits, it said that, we're not going to issue any building permits to the people until, everything is clean and the land is ready for them to go and build. So in that case, does that mean the entire, for both Kula as well as Lahaina, that all of the lots must be cleaned off before any one person builds? Or does that mean that you can, as it gets cleaned, people can go build?
It is specific to that property that was cleaned up. So if a single property is cleaned up, then it would not prohibit building permits on that cleaned property as long as it was determined how, right?
Sure. Yeah, basically it says completed on the affected property. So the cleanup has to be completed on the affected property specifically. So that property would be allowed, that permitting once the cleanup for that property is done.
Question is, the mayor just appointed a 5-member advisory team. So are you all going to be working in collaboration with them, or what is that relationship that you will have with them, if at all?
Thank you for the question. So that's the recovery phase. So the cleanup phase is considered kind of straddling rescue and recovery. So the role is going to be assisting us also with outreach, enrollment and outreach of the advisory group that's been created.
When you say cleanup, to what degree do you plan to take that cleanup? Is it so that it will be ready the property would be ready for the property owner to build on it? I was trying to say, you're gonna clean that property to the point where somebody can begin to rebuild.
Yes, that is the goal of the program.
Okay, great. Now, when you do that, does the property owner have to pay FEMA in advance and then get reimbursed? Or there's no upfront cost to the property owner if the property owner is in the government program?
If the property owner is in the government program, there will be no upfront cost. They're only required to provide their insurance information if they have a debris removal clause in their insurance.
Okay, and so the other thing is when you're cleaning up a person's property, my understanding is that the water lines and sewer lines have been damaged. So is that part of the cleanup or not?
I will have.
So we don't do any subsurface work other than that 6 inches of removal. So water lines, sewer lines, electric lines, all of the utilities will be mapped and they'll be cut and capped at the end of the debris removal process. So they'll be rendered safe, but there's no recovery associated with our work.
So Aaron, what about those issues? I mean, before you can rebuild, those things have to be taken care of.
I'll jump in. So Infrastructure Task Force has been doing assessments on all of the infrastructure and bringing in teams to look at those and then looking to identify costs to replace infrastructure systems where needed.
Okay, but I don't want the public to think, property owners to be misled and think, oh, once FEMA cleans up my property, I can build. That's not going to happen because all these other issues need to be addressed.
Thank you. Great point. So if the public wants to go to the MauiRecovers.org website, there are maps available that show the status of water systems, wastewater systems, et cetera. Those are updated weekly to identify where improvements have been made and where different resources have been cleared and can come online. So keep track of that because everywhere that is not functional is currently identified. So in terms of timeline, we'll get updates as they're available up on that site, but that's correct. Even if it was cleaned up tomorrow, they wouldn't have water and wastewater. So there's parallel tracks we have to take through this.
Okay, thank you for the.
They could start the permit process even if they couldn't rebuild, or would they need the water and wastewater to be functional before they start a permitting process?
Thank you. We are still working to figure out the permit process for this incident. The building code currently provides a procedure for 1 and 2 family dwellings to get emergency permits that involves not involving the reviewing agencies being water and wastewater. However, because of the dire issues with that infrastructure, we need to assess whether that's advisable to be processing permits until we know the infrastructure is safe for people to inhabit those rebuilt structures. Thank you.
Like the permit process up to that line, and then once that becomes clear, then it'll be like just tip it over the edge, Paul.
Yeah, in theory, we could have everything ready and then it'll just be contingent upon those last infrastructure pieces getting cleaned up, and then people could start living in their homes again.
And then for the 6 month 100% reimbursement, can you start and stop that, or you're not gonna start that for Kula because Lahaina is not ready, and you rather start that 6 months when the big money is gonna be needed?
So to clarify, the decision on that is the governor has indicated that state budget and finance will be the ones to make that decision. And I can get back to you about that. I do not know.
So if Kula is cleaning up prior to the 6 month 100% reimbursement, is it on the 90-10 plan?
Yes, that is correct.
And then would the insurance contribution count towards that 10% or no?
No. Well, actually, that is do you know that, Cole? Yeah.
have to provide a little clarity. So the insurance is kind of separate from the cost sharing with the federal government. If work happens before or after, that cost share is with the state government or the county government, however that's sorted out, but not with the landowner, right? Traditionally, the way we do it in California, and how we may or may not choose to follow it, is after the work is done, we look at kind of the overall burn and say, okay, that 6 months is the opportune window to take up to 100% with the federal government. So that's likely a similar approach may be followed here, but it is usually a continuous 6 months, and it's consistent across the entire disaster, not community by community, if that makes sense.
Sure. The question was about the insurance portion. Is that counted towards the FEMA's 90% or to the county and state's 10%? Because, or is that just taken off the top and then that whatever is left over split into 90%, 10%?
So Cole, if I can, it's two separate things. So it's more like who's going to pay the bill at the front end, right? So instead of it being 90-10, it's 100 up front for FEMA. But ultimately, the request back for insurance payment is the same, whether we're on the 100% or the 10%, because we can't do the duplication of payment. So,
Yeah, that wasn't my question. My question is like, so there's insurance money that's going to the overall cost. Would that recouping of money go towards the FEMA's 90%, or would it go towards the county and state's 10%, or would it be taken off the top and then whatever is left over, the FEMA has to cover 90% of what's left over after the insurance payment, and county and state have to cover 10% of that?
I apologize, Councilmember. I misunderstood your question originally. It's probably a question best for FEMA. In California, our experience has been that insurance recovery goes against the federal cost share, not the state or local cost share, which is, not our preferred option in California either. But that might be something to explore with FEMA, because I think they have perhaps a bit of discretion in how that works.
Yeah, maybe if they take it off the top and then it's still 90-10, like if it was 100,000 and you get a 10,000 payout, then 90% of 90,000 goes to FEMA and 10% of 90,000 goes to the county and state. Seems kind of fair, equitable.
Yeah, I know in the past, California has advanced the position that the insurance should be deducted exclusively from our cost share, because it's, our constituents. FEMA did not follow us in that argument, but it's certainly an argument that could be advanced, I think.
Okay, thank
The
you.
infrastructure is going to be a big deal. Director Molina, what's the status of the wastewater and water capacity in Lahaina the way it is now? And is there enough capacity for it to be rebuilt the way it was with a little extra? I mean, what's your, it'd be great if we could replace it, but it doesn't seem like it's going to fit. What's the capacity in Lahaina for wastewater and water? Thank you.
With all due respect, Member Cook, I think that's outside the scope of this meeting, and that is worth an entire meeting in itself to have that conversation, because it is a moving target at this point in time.
Okay, I respect that there's no answer, but that's going to be critical on us being able to calendar it out. So may I ask, in Paradise, what was the average lot size? And then in Lahaina, what is the average lot size? There's been some parallels made, not directly, but is Lahaina more challenging and different because there's a lot of small lots?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Councilmember. I don't know statistically the similarity. Anecdotally, having driven through both communities, I do think the lots in Lahaina appear smaller than the lots in Paradise were. Importantly, the campfire affected Paradise and then 3 other unincorporated communities where the lots were much larger, just because they were more rural communities. So any averaging being done should probably look at that.
We had a minute to talk to them during our recess, but for the record, what kind of documentation do people need to provide for the ROE permit? I know that there's a checklist, but for the people listening, what kind of documentation are they going to show that they're the lawful owners of the property and can sign this permit?
when you go to mauirecovers.org on the fire debris removal page, it has both the right of entry and the checklist to identify what's needed. So in terms of owners, we do ask for your property tax billing or statement, and then your TMK number. If we can confirm that the name on the application and the real property tax is the same, typically there's no further investigation needed. If it is a trust and there's multiple people on the trust, we will ask for the trust document. And then in all cases, you're asked to provide your photo ID, state-issued photo ID.
Thank you. And then for my own curiosity, is there any reason why anyone is ever denied in this government program? Since it's a permit, is there any reason why somebody wouldn't qualify for this government program?
Sorry. So there, I think we discussed the 120 square foot eligibility. So there may be instances where if the property owner starts to do debris removal prior to enrolling, that might make them ineligible for the program. But in general, I don't think we've come across ineligibility inherent in a particular applicant.
Okay, so it is safe to say that anybody who applies through the ROE government program will be accepted?
At least from the residential perspective, there's a different process for public, because that's a different ROE process, as well as for the commercial structures or industrial structures.
Okay. How different? Significantly different?
Under the PPDR approval letter, I think those entities had 60 days to opt in. For public, it's 60 days to opt in, and there's no further requirements. For commercial structures, I think there will be an application process to go through, which might extend the cleanup for those.
On that is,
okay.
We know the mayor was speaking on creating a division of emergency permitting. With this right of, is that the division they would go through to get that right of entry permit?
It could be, but not necessarily. They're two kind of separate animals. The ROE for the cleanup versus permitting post cleanup.
And then it mentioned the director in the bill a lot. That was DEM's director, I'm assuming, because that's what it said in the definitions. It was DEM. So I don't know if the DEM, that's the part I'm kind of clarifying. The DEM director will follow the process of the permitting coming along, or is that?
The departments that are going to be assigned to the different sections of the ordinance is still something that's being discussed. I had submitted some proposed amendments to change DEM to a new definition of designated department. The proposal was to have director changed to designated department throughout, and that would essentially allow the mayor to designate a department to administer different sections of the ordinance. And I think in a practical sense, no matter which department is going to be designated, they are going to need to work with other departments, state and federal, and county, and potentially have to contract some of the work out as well. So I don't think DEM is necessarily going to be able to be consistent through this. We may need to look at changing to either designated department, or once that's been determined, have that put in the bill before it's passed on second reading. So
yes, as Mike said, we're still trying to determine who's going to carry what. The thing to note is the soil testing, the air quality monitoring. We don't have a department in the county of Maui that does that. In California, which we pulled a lot of the information from, there's a health office typically. Because we don't have that, and that would normally be a lead, we're having to kind of build a system to support this. So we're going to need to use State Department of Health for that and develop a critical path for permit review for that. So still working on that. I think the designated department for now is our preferred, just so that we can keep moving forward and create, build the airplane while we're flying it.
Issue. We had a lot of concerns at the HVAC conference if current permits that are in the queue will be put on hold, considering this emergency permitting process.
Yeah, so a couple issues with that. So obviously the ordinance puts those permits in question. first of which being whether there's still debris cleanup on that property that needs to happen before construction under any issued permits or pending permits can proceed. The second part being our infrastructure issues about whether we're prepared to allow construction to resume at this point in time, given our infrastructure challenges with water and wastewater. So those are two kind of ongoing issues that we're working right now.
Okay, Mahalo, Director, we can extend those concerns to those applicants. And then a follow-up on the PPEs. If we're allowing residents to sift through the debris, are those N95 masks appropriate? No.
I would refer to the State Department of Health website for their guidance on which PPE is appropriate, as they are the ones who will be issuing that.
Can residents request an alternative to the tackifier and still be part of the government program?
So that is something that would need to be brought up with US EPA if they would not like tackifier applied to their property. And so that's a concern that would need to be worked out between the County of Maui and US EPA.
I know there was an issue about some kind of pine resin that would be a more suitable alternative. And then my last question for you, Chair, Ms. Bacola Davis asked about the separation from Kula and Lahaina. You be submitting an ASF today's separate those two?
I hear your question. So I would really like to know what the members are thinking about that. And if we could have a discussion of it. I will tell you that I am prepared with an ASF to do that. But I'm most interested to hear what you think about, doing that if there's a need. And also to ask questions of maybe Aaron as how we're doing with the reentry and ROEs that have come from Lahaina and how that would be handled. So if I could, I guess it's my turn. That'll be my question then.
Sure. So, let me first say that with the outreach we've done, people are on a huge spectrum of where they are in terms of their readiness to deal with the circumstances. So we have people who are still very much in shock and not ready to process the next step. And then we have people, I relayed, much like when people get a diagnosis, they deal with it differently. Some people don't want to address it. Some people address it by wanting to plan and take the next step and take action. And we have people at all points of that spectrum in both Kula and the Lahaina communities. So in terms of meeting people where they're at, that's kind of what we're trying to provide here with, like, what can my next steps be? What are my options for moving forward? For reentry in Lahaina, while we weren't and haven't been pushing at all really in Lahaina, we've been making information available generally, but not like requesting people attend specific meetings because they hadn't been allowed to reenter. But that changes today with the reentry of Zone 1C. So we will be putting out specific reentry requests to neighbors to come. They don't have to come right away if they're not interested yet or if they're not mentally there. It's totally understandable. But we'd like to be able, for those that are, to be able to present those options. So if they would like to move forward. As reentry starts to move forward and 2 to 3 zones a week start getting opened, it's gonna be relatively quickly that we'll be able to progress through the process of that community being able to submit their rights of, and frankly, I already have several dozen rights of entry for Lahaina for people who have already reached that conclusion and want to just start planning. So for us, I think the deadline is the question. Did you want to create 2 different deadlines for Kula, one for Kula, so we know we can get moving, and maybe a further out deadline for Lahaina? I think that could be a possibility. But we certainly want to create the expectation that folks do need to begin processing and understand what their options are, and then pick a lane, decide what path they would like to take in a timely way so that we can ensure the environmental protection. That is, of course, we wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't some concern with the environmental health of these areas.
Today we have re-entry of Zone 1C, which is kind of by the Lahaina Civic Center, the Hawaiian Homes area. And then I heard Director Oliveras was saying last night at the MAC that the team would do an assessment and then figure out how you're going to do the next step. So it won't be a slam dunk. We'll just keep on going, right? So if I could ask you then, how would you involve those residents so that they can have, like training or, more education, I think is probably needed.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's where the outreach comes in. So as you've seen in Kula, we had a community outreach meeting, we had a resource fair, and then we had a follow-up kind of question and answer. We would like to do that for every neighborhood that's been affected. We also have outreach teams at the Lahaina DRC, the Disaster Recovery Center, that can answer questions about debris removal. Today's their first day there because we knew reentry was going to start. And we have people now, we set up a right of entry intake center in the lobby this morning as well. So it's staffed, people are there to answer questions. We did find, in terms of the resource fair in Kula, that's people's preferred. Some people are just ready to sign and they understand. A lot of people want the one-on-one consultation to talk through, what does this mean? It was very helpful to walk through with people their property sketch and have them, map out their property, show me where the rock wall is, show us where your septic tank is, all of those things. And to form, frankly, accountability, so the importance here is that I think folks know that we heard them, whatever their expectation is or concerns are, it's correctly documented. It's been documented by them in terms of intake. So it is a very high touch thing I've learned. They've taught me now that there does need to be a whole lot of availability and access for some folks who want to sign the right of entry permit. So we want to make that, open up that process as soon as we can in Lahaina for folks that are ready.
Thank you. So for the unstable structures, the ones with the red or yellow placard, would those qualify to be removed as part of the debris removal?
Is that a Director Molina?
Yes, they would.
And then is Lahaina Crossroads one of those, or have we not reached it yet?
Yeah, I don't know. I can check. We have a GIS layer map that has shown the areas that have been designated and inspected. So I can get back to you about that, Member Paulton.
Cool. And then like the Kaya Ulu o Kupuohi, there's only, looks like the elevator shaft and maybe like the stairs or something. Would that be qualified for debris removal? Because it's only pieces that aren't going to be used. And then if the debris, like I think Fleetwood's was like built by like World War II or something, kind of like real strong structure, and it's not livable or usable as a commercial establishment, would they knock that down if the structure is structurally integrity?
Thank you. So FEMA is building a team with structural engineers to assist for any properties that or were part of the National Historic Register landmark district. So that's one of the buildings that's being assessed by structural engineers to determine if preservation is possible.
Oh, what about the office by the senior center, Kaunoa Senior Center, that was?
The mill office, the old Pioneer Mill office is also on that list, yeah.
Courthouse?
In the courthouse, yep. So actually, for anybody that's interested, Lahaina Restoration Foundation had done a mobile app. It's called Lahaina Historic Trail. You can actually see all of the sites that were contributing structures to the National Register District. All of those have been marked and would be part of the structural assessment.
So have some of those just burnt all the way to the ground, but there's some of them that are partially still standing and they're part of the historic register. How do those proceed?
Yes, so there's elements of some that are still standing, some there's nothing left. In some cases, the thing that made them eligible is below ground as well, with burial preserves, et cetera. So for all of those, they would receive the first cultural assessment and documentation to determine potentials for preservation, to identify clear areas that needed to be cordoned off so they're not impacted during debris removal.
And then if a portion of your home burnt, does it need to meet a percentage to be eligible? Like what if, you know, like one room burned down or something like that?
So, previous to this fire event, if there was more than one wall standing, it would not have been eligible for the debris removal program. Under the letter of approval, it might be eligible depending on the determination by Maui County for the whole structure.
Okay. And then in terms of debris removal and the special management area, is there any specific steps being taken different in the special management area or the historic district than for the regular areas that are not SMA or historic?
Yeah, so I think FEMA is currently working to see if there are any nonprofit or NGO organizations that might be able to shore up prior to debris removal, but we will have probably separate contract mechanisms to do cleanup when we can't take the whole structure and how we would address that. So that will be a separate part of the debris process.
Like dust fence along the coast or something like that?
Correct.
And then when you were talking about the trees that might not live 5 years or something like that, would it be a contract under the commercial for the trees on the commercial, public for the trees on the public, and residential for trees on the residential, or is there a specific tree contract?
So the assessment monitoring contract will also do the tree assessment to see which ones, and basically they barcode each of those trees saying it's an eligible hazard tree under the FEMA program. And then depending on the type of property, that contractor would do the debris removal or the tree removal.
And have the Kumu'ulu trees been marked, and will people be let known if any of those are scheduled for removal?
So we're going to work with Maui County to figure out which trees will be marked for preservation, and then the team will make a determination whether or not they can be saved.
Will the public be let know about the ulu trees?
Thank you. I was texting John Smith to find out because I know his arborist has been out there multiple times to determine if there's mechanisms to save, to encourage saving some of the trees that are out there. So ideally what we'll do is we'll get a map and identify everything that's been considered, primarily what's on government property or has been identified as an exceptional tree. I know that those would be top of the list. If there's others that the community wants to communicate up to us in terms of importance, we're happy to document that as well.
So you mentioned that there's an individual assistance program deadline too. What is that deadline?
So FEMA is offering what is called individual assistance, and that comes to people who were impacted by the disaster. People can enroll in individual assistance by going to the DRCs. The exact date of the deadline, I do not know at this time. I believe it is either the first or second week of October.
October 10th.
October 10th, yes.
When you said about usually they do all the debris removal and then they choose the 6 most expensive months in a row, who fronts the money? Is it FEMA fronting the money? And then the 6-month period, that's the most expensive. You're like here to here. And then everything else, the county and state come up with the 10%.
Yeah, so there's a bit of difference between how we do it in California and how it's happening here, right? Because here, the Army Corps is leading the work. So the federal government is by definition fronting the money because they're the ones paying the contractors. And then on the back end, for whatever is outside the 100% window, the state will essentially be kind of reimbursing the federal government, which is pretty different than how it normally happens. In California, we perform the work through our contractors, so the federal government is reimbursing us up to 100% in some cases. We're not usually that lucky, and so it's usually reimbursing, at 90 or 25%. So
If you know, the way that we reimburse FEMA is through cash, not, it's not gonna be in kind or anything.
that I'm not sure of. It's a good question.
By in kind, you're referring to concern of things like examples like property and things like that?
Oh, no, not at all. Like,
That will not happen.
thank you. Well, so our public works are working with you guys, so that's probably 10% of value if you take into account their salaries or overtime and things like that.
I believe their time actually can be submitted for reimbursement by FEMA for work on this project.
Okay, that's good. Now we're getting somewhere. I guess my next question would be for Mr. Hopper. If it's a cash payment or if it's in-kind donation through county workers, overtime or whatever, would that come out of the emergency fund?
I don't have an answer at this point, and it sounds like this is more of a state has the direct agreement with the federal government, and the county's involvement on that 10%. I have not been in discussions on that to this point, so that's information that we can look at. I imagine there's going to be a fair amount discussed as to how that will happen for the time frame outside of that. It also sounds like the governor is petitioning to have that time frame extended, which obviously would be, very important. So those specifics I have not gotten into. I have worked on this bill and the right of entry process and things like that. But
the state of Hawaii, under Hawaii Revised Statutes, Section 1 Alpha 16, establishes a major disaster fund, and this is essentially the state's rainy day fund, right? And so this is initially where all the spending on disasters and everything that happen within the state is going to come out of. As far as a county, you were referring to like the share that the county would be required to put forward. Yeah, I do not know exactly how much or if any that would be. Again, I can do some research and speak with the state AG and get back to you on that. So.
Okay, and if we can split the bill for have it apply to Kula until we're in to finish phase 1, possibly?
But I do want to make sure, I think the decision between how this ordinance proceeds and the federal cost share, unless I missed something, are different questions and don't connect with one another. So the decision to have this bill either address both or not would really have no effect on how the federal government's cost share waiver works. And I don't.
At what point will we, or not necessarily us, but the people who need their debris removal from their lots, know the rules and procedures by the director of the department that gets called out? When will they know what those are? Because we're kind of voting on a framework for fines and penalties and timelines without knowing what is expected of folks under the alternative program. Is that correct?
So I think what we know is the quality of cleanup will have to match the quality of Army Corps' mission. So what we're just trying to do right now is document that and memorialize it and identify how the county itself can review to ensure that that's happening. So I have to give Mike Hopper a whole lot of credit because he just jumped on it and got the right of entry done and got this bill developed for us to process. We do already have the draft, and I think in the next couple of weeks we could push out what those rules would be for cleanup, because we do have a framework. But it will help today to know, if everyone here, if
you folks are okay with us moving forward with the ordinance as we've identified it, we can continue building and finalizing.
So if we move forward with this ordinance just for Kula, and we don't have the rules and procedures yet, they're being drafted as we speak, then as Kula begins phase 2, they will have the specific rules and procedures that they need to follow under the alternative program. And there was one resident that might possibly take up the alternative program. And we could kind of see how that works out. And then we can come back and enact the bill for Lahaina.
I would strongly advise against actually, if you want to look at deadlines different, perhaps we could ask FEMA about those issues, but I would sort of strongly advise against completely separate bills and not taking action on this for Lahaina area for a few reasons. One is it makes clear that the debris removal is not permitted unless it's through one of the two programs. Two, it authorizes the creation and collection of the right of entry forms, which will take a large amount of time before, and needs to be in place, I would say, earlier, well before the work would be set to begin. And so for, to have that separate, we already have 2 more meetings, first and second reading for this before it could become law. When you look at the timing of this is sort of intended to be in place earlier than we are right now. It talks about the different phases, and it also talks about regulating the cleanup immediately. So these are passed generally as emergency ordinances, is my understanding. And so I would raise a concern about having nothing in place mentioning right of entries in the county code, mentioning debris removal in the county code for that period of time, because the collection is ongoing. This does say that if a right of entry executed prior to the effective date is effective once the ordinance is passed. But to have that degree of uncertainty, I understand there's still things to be worked out, but I was, again, others can discuss this as well on the panel that you have, but I raise a concern about having a bill not in place for Lahaina as this right of entry process moves on. But that's the concern that I have. And the other question is, what would be different other than, I guess, the deadline between the two? If you have 2 bills, what would be the differences? And really think about that, because much of this framework is dictated by the federal process. Some of the things the county can decide in the ordinance, but in looking at it, a lot of it is in place through that process. And so that would be the other question, is what would the differences be in those ordinances, and think of those. But, I was just sort of concerned of this, of the timeline we had looked at, and the going to committee and then having 2 more meetings as far as that timeline. And I'm still not sure when this would be adopted, if it goes through the regular council schedule, if it's going to be mid-October, to not have anything in the code mentioning the right of entry process or the debris removal process. I was concerned because
And I guess to follow up on that concern, the page of the bill has reference to HRS that has been suspended for us. So can you unsuspend us so that we can pass your bill, or how does that work?
Well, we got advice from the Attorney General's office on this. The suspension says things can happen on an emergency basis, but it doesn't say that provision is no longer effective for anything. So it doesn't suspend the council's ability to adopt ordinances, but it would allow certain activities to take place without that happening. So again, I sort of went over at the beginning of the meeting why this wasn't something done within the framework of an emergency rule. And it's for several reasons. One is that this is most likely going to outlast some or all of the emergency proclamations as far as the timelines. Another is that that this is the through best practices how this is adopted in other communities. Again, we don't necessarily do the same thing as all other communities, but in the California for the wildfire response, this is adopted as an emergency ordinance in those places in a similar form. And so that was sort of a parallel approach that we had looked at. And there were several other reasons. One is that a scheme like this is an emergency rule, I think would be sort of awkward in that this is designed as an ordinance, but you know, those were the concerns that we had for as far as timing.
Emergency proclamation lasts till November 6th. You could collect those right of entries under the emergency rule proclamation up until November 6th, and we can give our communities that time before the legislation, because like you said, under the emergency proclamation, you can move emergency stuff forward, right?
I mean, there's, to my knowledge, nothing in the proclamation specific to right of entry collection. I could be incorrect on that, but at this point, the right of entry collection is happening directly sort of through that state and federal process, but there's nothing in the code sort of dictating the county's that specific process. We have existing ordinances right now, Chapter 9.32 and the building code in place to give the county some authority to deal with debris removal, but it's not as specific as this type of ordinance would be. And this does things like talk about signature authority, and again, it goes through, I think Section 4 is important as far as sort of immediately determining how the debris removal process would happen for properties. And so without that clarity, the concern is, and then the other question is what would be different in the two? And if there's an extent that can be incorporated, we could look at that, but that's the concern. And then passing one only for upcountry and having nothing in place for Lahaina until potentially until November, without anything in the code. I did have a concern with that approach, because we have to sort of piece together what we can do without the authority here.
It sounded like you already are doing the right of entry collection for upcountry, because you said all but one person was indicating that they wanted the government assistance. Is that correct?
You could check with Ms. Wade, but I mean, I think they're being accepted, but not necessarily executed on the county side and move forward with. So that's
and the executed and move forward with entails what?
A county signature on the document, verifying all of the property information to make sure the right owner has that, and certain other aspects. But I have not been directly there collecting them, but that's my understanding, and would really want to have a very clear process set up for that to happen. And of course, that would need to happen well before, at least in the case of Lahaina, the work being done, because that collection is going to take a very long period of time. And the Army Corps of Engineers won't be able to scope out their work until they have a good idea of the right of entry forms that they will have and where they have them and how many they have. So those are my concerns, along with the 6-month window that we're going to potentially have. And if one starts, does the other start, which is a new wrinkle that we sort of have here. But those are some of the concerns.
And there's no date as to alternative program rules and procedures will be released to the public.
Currently in the rules, it says that a department a state or a county department can adopt them, and it authorizes the county department to adopt them by administrative rule, which would require a 30-day public hearing notice period. I understand there's a draft out, but and to a large extent, it's going to mirror the federal program because at least the degree is going to be the same. But there has to be things in place like, the department processing those and reviewing those applications. And that's going to be the last of the deadlines. That's going to be, there's going to be the government program and then the alternative program as far as a later deadline. And those both, I understand, have yet to be established. And the ordinance authorizes the departments to establish those deadlines. So those are things to as yet be determined. And I understand it's difficult to say this is important to have in place, but not have all the answers to these things. But that's why the ordinance is sort of drafted based on past practice in these situations, is that it authorizes a framework, and with that framework, other aspects are filled in. But to have that framework in place early is, I think, the intent, and have those other things filled in. Even if the council by resolution would determine a deadline or something in the future. But
how does the federal government view the Upcountry fire and the Lahaina fire? Does the federal government see that as the same disaster?
Yes.
Even though they're separate locations and separate causes and separate everything.
So the federal government, FEMA, makes a federal disaster declaration, right, to the president. And that disaster declaration is titled the Maui Wildfires. It has a declaration number and everything. And that includes Lahaina, Kula, Olinda, all of the fires that were started as a result of Hurricane Dora passing south of the islands. That is what FEMA determines. So everything, all of the programs, all the assistance is underneath that federal disaster, Maui Wildfires.
We did have a larger red line that had incorporated some more general changes. I also know there was potentially a more narrow change dealing with the deadline issue. And a definition of reentry. So those are a couple different things. So I'm not sure if you want to. The larger one, which I had provided a while ago, but I don't know if the committee has seen, changes DEM to designated department, and has a definition of designated department, which basically says the department tasked by the mayor to administer that part of that section of the ordinance. A couple other changes, which I do think are non-substantive. I deleted the definition of eligible roads or parcels. They were sort of carryovers from the Butte County ordinance, but actually aren't used. Non-substantive. The changes are in section 1I, added reference to wastewater collection and treatment facilities. That's informational, but I don't think is substantive. The definition of director has been stricken, and it's been changed to designated department. You can see that definition there that states designated department means the department or departments of the County of Maui designated by the mayor to administer the applicable sections of this ordinance or their designees, period. The mayor may assign a different department or departments to administer each section of the ordinance. I struck the definitions of eligible roads and parcels because those aren't used. The definition of government program added a reference to United States government, sort of more general than just the FEMA or Army Corps, even though those are still listed. I did, on page 4, add a definition of re-entry, which states re-entry means the official authorization of access to properties within the burn zones. And then throughout, where it was previously Director of Environmental Management or Director in many places, that was changed to designated department throughout. There was reference in section 4 at the bottom to county building official instead of director, because in that case, it's essentially the Public Works Department make that determination. Section 5, I sort of tweaked the discussion of the assignment language. I think I need to do a little more work on that. But essentially that section A, I still need to tweak that a bit more, but that's basically to state an assignment of benefits is not required. It's just duplication of benefits is prohibited. I do need to work on that language. I just added that change that was requested by FEMA. And then sort of the critical part that I think Member Paulton was discussing in section 5B, there's going to be added a statement. That 5B section states that the designated department can administer the collection of the right of entry and establish a deadline established by the department. So this is for the government program. Right of entry has to be submitted by a deadline established by a designated department. There's language added there that states such deadline must be at least 1 month after completion of reentry for the Lahaina wildfire disaster area. It also states that the designated department may designate staff to review and sign right of entry permits. And then section D there, we deleted reference to a private tree program. That was a carryover from Butte that is not applicable here. Section 6, we put designated department and put in some clarifying language there on the process for adopting the alternate program. It states that the designated department shall administer the alternate program consistent with the requirements reviewed and approved by applicable federal, state, and county agencies. The designated department is authorized to adopt the requirements of the alternate program as administrative rules pursuant to Hawaii Revised Statutes Chapter 91 to the extent required. And then multiple references to designated department were added. And then the other sort of critical part, section 6D. That section, this is for the deadline to enroll in the alternate program. It states again, similar to the language for the government program, such deadline must be at least 1 month after completion of reentry for the Lahaina wildfire disaster area. And then several other changes to designated department throughout. And that's all the changes. So the primary change in this version was to change DEM to designated department. Several other changes, which I do believe are essentially non-substantive, and then in the language that for the basically making sure the deadline for signing up for the government or alternate program, which is established by the designated department, has to be at least 1 month after reentry. And I understand.
One of my main concerns was that folks would have to make a decision on what program for Lahaina when they haven't even had a chance to visit their property. I thought it would be unfair for them to have to decide that before they had an opportunity to visit their property, and knowing that today is the first entry, zone entry of 85 zones, and so it's not clear when that would be. So the language that we had come up with is to be more, give more time rather than less. And it would say, such deadline must be at least 1 month after completion of re-entry for the Lahaina wildfire disaster area. And then it also defines what re-entry is, as he said. And so that's for everybody, not just Lahaina, but Lahaina people won't have to make any decision. They won't have a deadline until 1 month after the last person is able to visit their property.
Section 5A, the only additional change needed is to strike the word assign in the second sentence and change that to provide. An assignment is sort of a specific legal thing, and FEMA just wanted, I think, us to be clear. Federal law doesn't require assignment per se of benefits, of insurance benefits, but it does require that if the federal government performs the debris removal work and the homeowner receives insurance proceeds for debris removal work that was done by the government, it has to provide those proceeds to the government because it was work done by the government. And so that's what this sort of language is clarifying. The law doesn't...
So which one of you has experience with providing the insurance company proceeds? I think the word assign is correct, but I don't want to mince words.
Mr. Hopper, so did that request come from FEMA? Assign and provide?
And we changed that in the right of entry. They don't necessarily say we can't have an assignment done, but it was just a statement that federal law requires an assignment. They said it technically doesn't require an assignment. It just prohibits duplication of benefits. So that's sort of a subtle change that they wanted. And so the collection of proceeds and avoiding duplication of benefits is definitely, though, something that the county is going to have to work most likely with a contractor on facilitating, because it's not a typical part of a right of entry process here. So that's if they give it to the government directly as authorized by the homeowner, then that's, I think, what's anticipated by the right of entry agreements. The language here, again, this language is just a statement of the law, and the requirements of how that's done is going to be through the right of entry form process, which requires insurance information be provided, and the process the county is going to have to set up for that type of program. And it's been done before, as I understand it, but it's a challenge. And so I think the county most likely will be looking for some contractor help with that process.
Thank you, Mr. Hopper. But I was just trying to get clarification on the word assign. And I think that word assign is correct. But if you feel it's interchangeable with the word provide, that's fine with me. Thank you.
I just want to clarify that nobody will be forced to make any decision until 1 month after the last person is able to re-enter their property. Although if people want to sign up with a government program, which is free and that you don't have to coordinate all the different entities that goes into clearing a property correctly, safely, and for the environment, the government program is the way to go, and it's free. And if you want to sign up for it before you visit your property, that's allowed. If you want to sign up for it right after you visit your property, that's allowed. But there won't be any deadline until 1 month for everybody, until 1 month after the last person is allowed to re-enter their property. So no one's being coerced into doing something until they at least have a chance to visit their property and reflect on what they want to do. In the government program, they can also specify sensitive areas. And, you know, if you have a rock wall that's still standing and you want it to continue standing, you can specify those things and let them know, like, where your septic and cesspool is, and if you have, like, an exceptional tree, and so on and so forth.
Yes, Chair. So the main motion on the floor, which is to recommend passage on first reading of Bill 86, 2023, that was made by Councilmember Kama, seconded by Council Chair Lee. And before the committee right now is a motion to substitute with the red line version that Mr. Hopper distributed to the committee. That was made by Councilmember Paulton and seconded by Council Chair Lee.
Okay.
And I just wanted to clarify if everybody's okay with that. Motion also included a change to page 6, section 5A, second sentence, to replace assign with provide. So it would read, as required by federal law, owners will be required to provide any insurance proceeds for debris or hazard tree removal to the government to avoid duplication of benefits. If everyone is okay with that,
Yeah.
as a friendly amendment to my motion to substitute.
Okay. Anybody have any questions regarding that? I think Mr. Hopper explained it pretty well. Okay, very good. All right. So we'll take a vote on the substitution. All in favor, say aye. Aye. I guess we have 7 ayes. Chair Lee, you said aye, yeah. Okay, 7 ayes, 1 excuse. Oh, 2 excuse. Kiani as well as Tom Cook, right? So 2 excuse. So 7 ayes, motion passes. Main motion, anybody else would like to say a few words? Oh, well, this is the substitution, right? So now we're on the main motion. Okay, all in favor of the main motion, say aye. Okay, that's 7 ayes, 2 excused, Member Cook and members Kiali, Rollins, Fernandez, so excused. Motion passes. So I want to thank all of you for working on this. I actually reserved 2 full days to work on this, trying to get it possibly passed in case we needed it. So now you have a day off tomorrow before we go to your meeting. You want to say anything about your meeting on Wednesday? Member Hodgins.
Sure. Yeah, why not? Since you're giving us this opportunity, we are having a meeting at the Westin on Wednesday at 9 o'clock to discuss the recovery and resiliency of Lahaina and its upcoming endeavors of what we need to do as a community to move forward. Thank you, Chair.
Is it their main ballroom or what?
Yeah, the Honoapi Ilani one, I think.
Okay, very good. Appreciate that. And members, every day, right, the disaster is all around us. So appreciate everybody working, not only when you're in the chambers, but when you are out there in the community. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I want to thank our resources. You all are awesome. Thank you very much. The whole nation has come to help us. And we really appreciate the experience and expertise that you are bringing with the different wildfire disasters that have happened in your community and the job that you have to. Jordan Molina, thank you very much for being here. He's a brand new dad, everybody. Yeah, so we're like in the midst of all of this. He's also being the super dad, and thank you very much. I'm so happy for you. He has 2 boys. I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of fun with them as they grow up. And so I also want to thank all the communities who are, working. And if anybody has gotten to attend, I want to thank the mayor, Mayor Bisson, for having the meeting in West Maui at the Civic Center, as well as yesterday at the Maui Arts and Cultural Center. And information was provided by all the different agencies and departments that are involved with this whole endeavor that we're going through. And I want to say that when he opened his speech yesterday, he looked at us who are sitting in the audience and he said, Council, I will continue, or I promise to be working with you more closely. So I saw him in the elevator when we walked in, and I said, oh, thank you very much. We look forward to that too as we work on this disaster. I want to thank my Kula community for working with me as we walk forward together. And Tamara, you want to say anything to your community?
Yeah, we're happy to have you on Wednesday. We're looking forward, and we'll be there in the after work hours, even if there's a pause in testimony.
Okay. When does the meeting end? What does that mean?
10 p.m.
10 p.m. Okay.
Yeah, we have the ballroom until 10 p.m., so we'll stay as long as required.
Okay. All right.